There is a particular kind of uncomfortable silence that occurs when someone exposes a flaw in your reasoning, not a polite pause or a moment of reflection. The kind of silence where something in your chest tightens and your first instinct is not to consider what they said, but to find a flaw in them. Most people have experienced that silence and felt that tightening. And almost nobody speaks honestly about what it actually means. Because the hardest thing in the world is not admitting you were wrong about something external. It is sitting with the possibility that the way you think might have limits you have never examined. Psychology is very clear on this point. Intelligence is not just about what you know. It is about how you respond when what you know turns out to be incomplete. And sometimes the most telling sign of limited cognitive ability is the absolute certainty that you are already thinking clearly enough. Here are 5 signs that your mind may be working against you even while it convinces you everything is fine. Sign 1: you believe you are right most of the time. Not occasionally. Not on topics you know deeply. But most of the time on nearly everything. If that sounds familiar, stay with me because this one is more uncomfortable than it appears on the surface. Highly intelligent people tend to carry a quiet, persistent doubt about their own conclusions. Not paralyzing doubt or the kind that prevents action, but the kind that keeps a small door open in the back of the mind saying you might be missing something here. People with lower cognitive flexibility do not have that door. They have certainty. Psychology calls this overconfidence bias. It works like this when your understanding of something is genuinely shallow. Your brain does not register the gaps. It registers what it knows and stops there. The less you actually understand something, the more complete your understanding feels. The more you actually understand it, the more clearly you see everything you still do not know. The mirror moment here is simple. Think of the last time you were absolutely certain about something. Not confident, but certain. The kind of certain where the idea of being wrong felt almost offensive. That certainty is worth examining because it is usually loudest exactly where understanding is thinnest. Sign 2: you avoid changing your mind. You have had a conversation that went like this. Someone presents you with evidence that contradicts something you believe. The evidence is solid and you can feel that it is solid. And instead of following the evidence, you spend the next several minutes finding reasons to dismiss it. Not because the reasons are good, but because changing your mind feels like losing. And losing, even in a private conversation where nobody else is keeping score, feels unbearable. This is not intelligence. This is ego, wearing the clothes of conviction. Psychology is unambiguous. Here, smarter individuals update their beliefs when presented with strong evidence. Not reluctantly or after a long defensive process of protecting the old idea. They update because they understand that a belief is not an identity. Holding on to a wrong idea just to protect your sense of self does not make you consistent. It makes you rigid. And rigid thinking is not a strength. It is the ceiling that stops you from growing past a certain point. The villain here is the story most of us were told growing up. That changing your mind is weakness. That admitting you were wrong makes you look foolish. That the person who holds firm is stronger than the person who reconsiders. That story is wrong. And believing it is costing you more than you realize. Here is the honest thing that needs to be said before we go further. None of these signs are comfortable to recognize in yourself. They are not designed to be. Because the whole problem is that the mind with these patterns does not experience them as problems. It experiences them as clarity, as confidence, as knowing who you are and what you stand for, which is exactly why they are so difficult to catch. So if something in the first 2 signs made you want to click away or think of someone else who definitely needs to hear this, that reaction itself is worth sitting with. Because the person who immediately thinks this is about someone else is usually the person it is most about. Sign 3: you oversimplify complex things. Always. Never. Obviously. It is simple. These words function like shortcuts around the hard work of actually thinking something through. And some people use them constantly without noticing. The world is not black and white. Most situations that matter most. The ones involving people, systems, history, behavior, cause and effect, are layered in ways that resist any single clean explanation. Psychology suggests that reducing complex issues into absolute one-line answers reflects shallow processing, not confidence, not clarity. Shallow processing. Real intelligence does not demand simplicity from a complicated world. It sits with the complexity long enough to actually understand it. The cost of oversimplification is not just being wrong, it is making decisions based on an incomplete picture and never realizing the picture was incomplete. Because the simple answer felt so obvious that you never thought to look for what it was leaving out. Sign 4. You rarely ask questions. Think about the last conversation you had where you genuinely did not know the answer to something. Did you ask? Or did you stay quiet? Nod along. And fill in the gaps with whatever felt reasonable. Curiosity is one of the most consistent indicators of intelligence that psychology has identified. Not the performance of curiosity or asking questions to seem engaged, but genuine, uncomfortable curiosity about things you do not understand. People who rarely ask why or how tend to stay at the surface of things, not because they are incapable of going deeper, but because somewhere along the way they develop the belief that not knowing is something to hide, that admitting you do not understand something makes you look less capable. So they stop asking. And when you stop asking, the brain stops expanding. It begins working with what it already has. And what it already has slowly becomes the limit of what it can do. Sign 5. You blame everything on others. Everyone faces setbacks and encounters situations where other people, bad luck, or external circumstances genuinely contributed to a bad outcome. That is real. But there is a pattern some people fall into where every failure has an external cause. Every mistake belongs to someone else, and every difficult situation is something that happened to them, never something they had any part in creating. Psychology links intelligence directly to metacognition, the ability to look at your own behavior with honest eyes, to ask not just what went wrong, but what you did, what you chose, what you could have seen earlier and did not. That kind of self-examination is genuinely difficult. It requires sitting with discomfort that most people spend enormous energy avoiding. But without it, the same patterns repeat. The same mistakes recur in different situations with different people. But with one constant you, and as long as you are not part of the analysis, you cannot be part of the solution. Overconfidence that mistakes certainty for clarity. Rigidity that mistakes stubbornness for conviction. Oversimplification that mistakes shallow answers for obvious ones. Incuriosity that mistakes comfort for understanding. Blame that mistakes self-protection for self-awareness. None of these feel like limitations from the inside. From the inside, they feel like knowing who you are, which is precisely what makes them so difficult to see. Psychology makes one thing clear about genuine intelligence. It is not about appearing smart. It is about being willing to be wrong, to be uncertain, to be the student in a room where you assumed you were already the expert. The most dangerous thought is not "I do not know enough." It is "I already know enough." Because the moment that thought settles in and stops being questioned, growth stops with it. Be honest with yourself. Which of these 5 do you catch yourself doing most? Not someone you know. Not someone who came to mind while reading. You. Because the willingness to answer that question honestly is already a sign that your mind is working exactly the way it should.